Shout out to each and every one of you. We're looking at Psalm 60, and we're looking at verse 10 and onwards. It says, O God, which has cast us off, please go with us, with our armies. Give us help from trouble, for vain is the help of man. Through God we shall do valiantly, for he it is that shall tread down our enemies. Now remember I did a video on Justice League, just clarifying things for John King, talking about the faulty video on the Snyder Cut evidence. Well, I am disappointed in this guy, Stephen Colbert. Stephen M. Colbert, for the most part, he was right about certain things concerning Justice League when he was defending it. But now he comes and he says Zack Snyder's cut of Justice League was more complete than you realize. And the baloney that he comes up with is really funny, because he's actually pulling from this video here, which was talking about Zack Snyder's stuff. Excuse me for a second. Now, I also saw the animation that they had before they actually started working on the film. And so they had an early draft of Steppenwolf, which looked more like a creature than he did look like a human. And the animations, all of the animated scenes actually were actual scenes depicted in Justice League. So, like I said before, it was, pretty much the movie was Zack Snyder's movie. But anyway, that's another story for another day. So let's go into what Mr. Colbert has to say. I'm really disappointed in this guy because he actually believes in a bunch of nonsense. He doesn't even know what he's talking about, but it's okay. Let's get into it. So, Justice League behind the scenes situation was already a source of controversy, and he goes into all of that. He talks about a significant portion of the movie is clearly the result of Joss Whedon reshoots. I guess this is where he gets it from. We'll go into that in a minute, and we will show you the truth and the lies of that. This video will cover all of that, because it's bullshit, man. There's a lot of bullshit out here. So let's get into his points. The first one, he says, is there a Snyder Cut? So he goes here and he says, others have claimed to have verified that a relevant version of Snyder Cut does in fact exist. Nobody credible has said that. Nobody. They were claiming that Ben Affleck's stuntman claimed that there was a relevant version of Snyder Cut out there. And that was debunked because Ben Affleck's stuntman said he did not say that. Alright? So nobody has claimed that, actually. Alright, so let's move. Barring an official announcement from Warner Brothers, Snyder himself, or a massive leak, it will continue to be a hotly debated issue. But a simple review of some of the already known production information shows that Snyder's cut of Justice League was in a fairly late stage of production when he left the project. Let's get into it. So the first point he makes is the point that this video was making, which was that Snyder had a locked picture. All right? And we dealt with this many times. Many times. And he's going to deal with it as well, where Larry Fong said locked and now doing DPI, or DI, should I say, DI, digital work on the movie. And when we looked at it, Larry Fong later said, I'm not really involved in the process. When I said I did not say the picture was locked and ready to release, I was saying that, they had finished one stage of the project, which was basically what he was saying. Now, Stephen M. Colbert, he comes up with some really inaccurate information, but let's just go with it. Snyder had a locked picture. It's bullshit. Let's just go with it. It wasn't locked, okay? And Larry Fong went back to say, look, man, I didn't say that, okay? DI is digital intermediate. That means you're digitizing a motion picture. Yeah, color grading and those kinds of things. So, anyway, he says, first and most significant is a post to his Vero account on February 17, 2017. We saw that in this picture here, Larry Fong, February 2017. It wasn't Snyder that posted that February 2017. It's Larry Fong who posted this. All right, digital edit's complete picture is locked before the DI is done. That's what Larry Fong said. Larry Fong, that's where that came from. So this guy, he comes back here and he's talking about the color adjustments and stuff. And he's saying, that the picture was locked and it was just color grading and that only takes a couple hours to do. All right. Picture lock means the unwieldy assembly cut has been whittled down and the scenes have been arranged for their final configuration. That's not what it means, and not what Larry Fong meant. This does not mean visual effects or audio mix is complete, but it does mean no footage. So this guy basically depended on this guy here. This guy who was saying that, see? It's from this guy's video that Stephen M. Colbert is basically borrowing his information. All right? But here, let me scroll forward a little bit. All right, so this is what was said by Larry Fong. But later on, let's see if we can find that there somewhere. Okay. Getting to that in a minute. This is it here. So somebody goes and tweets out that Justice League is done. Larry Fong says, no, I didn't say that. I wasn't there. This could be a VFX review or something else. In other words, Snyder didn't necessarily have to be doing... it didn't mean necessarily that the picture actually was locked. What he was saying was it was a stage in the progress. Snyder is not the one who does the color grading anyway. It's a studio that does that, and the DI. And Snyder may be overseeing certain scenes. All right? But people who don't know much in the industry, Larry Fong said, I did not say that. Okay? So, picture being locked was not what he really meant. He didn't mean literally that everything's done and he's going to the next stage. That's not what he meant. So, the whole premise under picture locked that this guy is going with, here he says, Larry Fong, Snyder's Batman v Superman, Watchmen cinematographer, close friend from film school, commented on this image specifically, confirming that DI typically means a movie that is completed from the first frame to last. But Larry Fong went back and said, I did not say the picture is locked and it's ready. In other words, all Snyder has to do is those little digital things and it's ready. He did not mean that. All he meant when he said picture lock was, he walked back on what he said, in other words. He said, look, it just means that they finished a good stage of a certain stage of this thing. And he was just very excited about it. He dialed back and corrected himself because possibly talking with Snyder or whatever. Snyder was like, hey man, I ain't done yet. You know what I'm saying? I'm still doing stuff. You know what I mean? And again, my point is very simple. If the early section of the movie, the editing and all of that, was done, and it wasn't a rough cut, then it wouldn't have to need reshoots. You wouldn't need reshoots for the movie. All right? Is it possible Snyder was doing some DI testing when this picture was taken? Sure, but it's highly unlikely. Actually, according to Larry Fong, he says, no, I didn't say that. I wasn't there. This could have been a VFX review or something else. So when they were saying this could be DI testing, this guy, he acknowledges that. He now realizes, oh, it could have been DI testing he was doing. All right? Because Zack Snyder is not the person who does the DI. He's not the guy doing the digital changes. It's the studio. So it could be that Snyder was having a discussion on what they wanted to do to get the color grading. Doesn't mean that he was at DI level even. He could have been still doing his editing. It's very important to understand. So, once again, this guy, he's assuming a lot. All right? Now it's February 17, 2017. We went through this already. So the whole premise that the picture was locked is a lie. And even Larry Fong discredits it and says, hey, whoa, picture not locked. That was not what I meant, even though I said that. Okay. Now they're talking about significant VFX and audio was done. And again, that comes from this video, which is an assumption on the part of these people. It's an assumption. All right? Now, what we got was an early draft. This was reported in Cinema Blend that Snyder had shown to friends and family and fellow filmmakers. Snyder had shown an early draft of the film. All right? So, and this was before March. Okay, this was in February. So, that is what you saw. That's what we know. Let's keep this moving. Now, they talk about the Jason Momoa underwater scene that Zack Snyder shot. But again, that was not finalized, and you can clearly see the shot wasn't finished. All right. So to tell me the VFX were finalized, not necessarily. We saw that the VFX for Cyborg wasn't completed, for the Flash wasn't completed. You saw a little piece of a shot with Aquaman, and again, I believe these are the tests. They were doing tests to see how the shots were coming out. And Zack is the kind of guy, when he successfully achieves what he's looking for, he has shared with people in his production process. So that's what basically you saw. And this is what this guy says. This means that it's long enough after the DI work that the color grading for the entire movie would already be completed. The second detail is the text at the bottom that says DPX for final per request. Original submission not Rios Interna obstructed. Okay. Review as proposed final. All right. Again, review being the key word here. Review. In other words, they're getting the look they want. So when they were looking at Aquaman, all right, this is the look we really want to get. Does not mean, obviously, it does not mean that Zack had finished the CGI for that scene. It just means he's showing you, hey man, this is what we're looking for. This is the kind of look we're looking for here that we want in the final shot, okay, of the movie. Doesn't mean he's got all of Aquaman's scenes done. You understand what I'm saying? Okay, so they were working on that. All right, so again, it's just kind of sad to see that. Now they're talking about audio mixing was in process. Yes, of course audio mixing is in process. You know, another thing that people don't understand, and again, we have, after you've shot principal photography, remember Zack had done principal photography, he was working on edits, and he was working on post-production at the time he had to leave the project. So it wasn't like Zack was just, mindless. And it seems as though he took a 2-week leave from the project and he tried to come back to the project to submerge himself into it and couldn't do it. And I believe the pressure that was on Zack, this is all my assumption, but just following the information, and some people, I would love Zack to just come out and say, you know what, dude, you got it right there. But I won't get it confirmed, but this is my assumption. My assumption is that Zack was pressed because he had to find a way to cut down the movie's runtime to a certain runtime, and because he left the project because of Autumn, to jump back into it and to all that pressure, and he's still trying to process Autumn's death, it didn't make any sense. So I think that's why he had to leave the project. Okay, and then he had his family and they were in a mess, so he went and sorted out that business. Now, to be honest with you, the ship, like they said, was set sail with Zack. In other words, Zack did a ton of work. It's like Zack did 95% of the work. And it was just post-production, edits, and make the movie seamless. So that's what Zack had. He had a cut of the film. He already had an early cut of the film. So everything was there just to finish, finalize, snip, and fine-tune. But it wasn't a watchable cut. It wasn't a cut that you could put up on the screen and say, oh, there you go, Justice League. It wasn't like that. It was still incomplete. The VFX, the post-production aspects of it, the fine-tuning. That's why we had reshoots. That's to fit the film together, make it nice, neat, and clean, and well cut. Okay? That's what we have. We have a rough cut. It's still there because, obviously, that rough cut is what made the cut we see. The cut we see comes from that cut. And that's why I'm telling you guys again and again and again, it's not that there's a Snyder cut out there. There's no Snyder cut. There's no Snyder cut. Warner Brothers knows this. Everybody in the business knows there's no Snyder cut. The cut you saw in the theaters, that's the only cut. However, like I was saying, and I guess Stephen L. Colbert is trying to say that, but he's still using erroneous information, is that, one, Whedon didn't do extensive reshoots. That's bullshit. 2, a lot of the color grading and color tone of this movie was not done by Joss Whedon. In fact, Joss Whedon has a say in it, don't get me wrong, and he did shoot the latter end of the movie. He had the latter end of the movie, that fight sequence, he had some things to do with that fight sequence, especially the pivotal line by Superman. When Superman was talking to Batman, that brief moment in time, that was Whedon. They did But I don't know if it was Snyder's people that did that. Maybe Snyder's people did some of it. Whedon's people did some of it, where Whedon was doing certain complete scenes. The final fight sequence is a mixture of Snyder and Whedon. Whedon would do little bits inside of there, especially with dialogue. Not so much the action scenes. They seem to have changed a bit of the ending, where Superman blows that freeze breath. I think that's Whedon. I could be wrong, but I think Whedon blew the freeze breath there. And I'm not too sure how this goes, but I do believe Steppenwolf still gets boom tubed up into space. So my guess is that moment where Steppenwolf's axe gets frozen, that's Whedon, and with the freeze breath is Whedon, I believe. I could be wrong. This could be Zack Snyder doing that. But I look at the CGI of Superman. That's what I'm marking everything with. We know that the final fight sequence was changed up a bit. Wonder Woman was coming down with Cyborg, and Aquaman were there, and she dropped down. Now she was just dropping down by herself. We saw a reshoot scene where she said something to Steppenwolf, hiding from the fight. We know that's Whedon right there. Superman, when he showed up, we know that's Whedon. We know that... What else is Whedon? I mean, you know, Superman talking to Batman was Whedon. So we had the sprinkles of Whedon in there, okay? The Flash running was Snyder. Superman catching the Flash was Snyder. Superman carrying the building was Snyder. Superman separating the boxes with Cyborg was Snyder. You would think it's Whedon, but no, it's Snyder. What else? They changed up how Batman was jumping down to deal with a parademon, but he was going to deal with a parademon anyway. So I'm just saying there are moments where there's Whedon, there's moments where there's Snyder. Okay, the color grading is a little bit too light. I guess Warner Brothers wanted it light. I think it's all Snyder's people working on the project. The people who were working on it were working on it before. But I would say this. I think that, oh yeah, when the Flash brings in Cyborg in there, that had to be reshoots. That would be Whedon as well. And even the Flash, when he takes on the parademon, he says, gross. I think the gross part is definitely Whedon. I don't know if him taking on the parademons was Whedon or Flash, Snyder. Not too sure. But what I can tell you is, I think that a lot of scenes that were left out in that thing. That last action sequence was chopped up. All right, chopped up a lot. Okay, I showed there was a scene where the Flash, when he was speeding, going to save the people, they actually show him speeding with the Speed Force going down the road. We didn't see that. All right, there's a lot of stuff in there we didn't get to see that would have been Snyderish, and I think a lot of the action scenes were chopped up and shortened for that last final fight sequence. So there's a lot of things that just been edited out. There's a lot of details. The Aquaman jumping up and stabbing two parademons, you know. So I'm just saying. Now, as to the overall story of Justice League, that's definitely Zack Snyder. From beginning to end, the last scene you see with Superman flying up in the sky, that's Zack Snyder. I mean, Superman, a lot of Superman Snyder. Whedon has, I think, two key pivotal scenes with Superman. His discussion with Lois Lane, all right, when he's actually talking to Batman, that's almost all Whedon. And when he comes up with the truth and justice thing, that's Whedon. And those are pivotal scenes with Superman. But most of the scenes with Superman are Snyder. All right? Or Clark Kent, it's Snyder. So, yeah. So, I just said this to show you that the VFX was not completed. In no way, shape, or form. It wasn't completed at the time when they were there. Now, they're talking about audio mixing. Audio mixing was always in process. So, that's not a big deal. They're going on to say, why was Snyder moving on so fast? Well, I don't even care about that. This doesn't matter. This is not hardcore facts about anything. So, this strongly suggests that the initial reports that Whedon was merely punching up some dialogue and creating some connective tissue may have been true, meaning the release of a longer, darker Snyder cut wasn't out of the question, as Snyder was clearly full speed ahead with his cut. I don't know about a longer, darker Snyder cut. I didn't get the sense that was going to happen because it was cleared by Snyder that this was going to be um, the final chapter. Both Chris Terrio and Zack Snyder said it was going to be a simpler story, and Jeremy Irons also confirmed that. So I didn't expect a longer story, to be honest with you. And which is why Warner Brothers was saying, "Hey man, if it's going to be a simpler story, then keep it to 2 hours, okay?" So I think that was the goal anyway. So it was going to make a difference. So he's still summarizing here without sufficient information. I would have liked to see Junkie XL's score incorporated in it, definitely. I mean, then we can get the finishing themes in terms of audio, thematically finish off the themes of the movie. All right. Now, and he even says he wished he finished his cut for the fans, which tells me it wasn't done. All right, so let's move back to the beginning of this because there's something else I want to address really quickly. But you guys knew all of this already. You saw my stuff. But this here. Every change Whedon made to Snyder's film. Let's go into it. Alright, so there's a big villain in Justice League. It isn't Steppenwolf, it's reshoots. I believe this is Alex Ledbeater. And a guy came and presented this to me. And he was showing, this is truth here. And I said, alright, let's bring it on. The exact nature of DCU's infamous reshoots, and Alex Ledbeater, by the way, is a hater of the DCEU, but let's just go. The exact nature of DCU's infamous reshoots has been debated endlessly over the past year. Was Whedon, whatever. However, nobody quite expected reshoots to be so rampant or obvious in the movie itself. Mishmash of tone, blah, 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 blah. Okay. We're not going to be assessing whether the changes made throughout Justice League's long journey to the big screen ultimately helped or hindered the film here, but be sure to keep an eye on Screen Rant over the release weekend, but instead take an analytical deep dive into all the changes that were made to Zack Snyder's film by Joss Whedon. As a warning, it's going to get messy. And he posted this, the hater posted this on November 17th, the release of Justice League. So this hater, a known hater of the DCEU, he posted this up. Joss Whedon reshot more than they're saying. Before looking at everything that was changed, it's important to know exactly what happened behind the scenes. We don't want to care about that. Alright. Almost all of Zack Snyder's Superman was reshot. Let's go. That's a lie, as I already told you guys. Superman's return at the center of Justice League and evidently the core of reshoots. But simply all Henry Cavill in Justice League, except for possibly 2 shoots, is from Whedon. That's not true at all. Well, let's go with it. Due to Henry Cavill's he had a mustache during the reshoots that Paramount wasn't allowed to, so the decision was made to remove it. And unfortunately, the VFX artist clearly didn't have enough time to perfect the effect, and it's incredibly obvious in the finished film, with Superman's cleft existing in a horrifying pit of the uncanny valley that distracts from every scene he's in. For the purpose of reshoot discovery, this is incredibly telling. We can confirm that, unless they applied this effect to other scenes to create an unnerving consistency, barely any of Zack Snyder's Superman is in Justice League. So it's Alex Ledbeater, a known hater, who says barely any of Zack Snyder's Superman is in Justice League. Alright. As a way to build up anticipation for his return from the dead, it now appears to have been because of all footage of him is still being worked on. The only released footage of Cavill in the trailers. The morning reunion with Lewis is Zack Snyder's version of the scene confirmed by storyboards, with Reason replacing it in the film. Alright, so we're basically saying in the trailers we saw Zack Snyder where Superman is talking about the ring, and Whedon replaced that with Lois Lane talking about she wasn't ready. She wasn't strong enough, okay? That particular scene was Whedon. But he is ignoring the scene before that and the scene after that, which is Zack Snyder. He's ignoring all the fight sequences before that when Superman was brought back from the dead. The entire act where Superman was brought back from the dead was Zack Snyder. The fact that Superman was fighting all the members of the Justice League was Zack Snyder. It's only when the Superman opened his mouth and said, "I know you," we know clearly that was Whedon. In fact, it looked like Henry Cavill didn't say a single word. And then we realized that "you don't let me live, you won't let me die, do you bleed?" That was all Whedon. That's confirmed. But the rest is all Zack Snyder when he's crying and everything, and he's holding on to Lewis, okay? And Lewis is calling him. And then they return to Kent Farm. That's all Zack Snyder until the conversation they have. The second one. And then the last conversation he has with his mother is all Zack Snyder. And then when we see Superman show up in the fight, that is Whedon. But immediately, as soon as the action starts, it's Zack. And then when he comes back and he talks to Batman and he flies off, that is Whedon. And then when he was racing with the Flash, he's, I believe when he says, you go to the left, you go to the right, that could be Whedon, it could be Zack. I particularly think it is Zack with Slowpoke. Could be Whedon. And then where he carries the whole entire building, that's Zack. Where he returns, beats up Steppenwolf, says, is this guy bothering you? That's Zack. When he opens up the mother box, that is Zack. Where he makes the joke, that is Zack. Where you see him at the end saying, I'm glad I didn't miss this, that is Zack. When he's talking to Bruce Wayne after they're repossessing the house again, that is Zack. When you see him open his shirt and fly off into the sky, that is Zack. So in other words, this here is a lie. Oh, by the way, Whedon did do completely the opening scene with Superman and the kids, and he also did completely the scene with the Flash racing Superman, okay? But you will find, if you go and check runtime, that Zack did the majority of the scenes where Superman was present. Whedon did do a lot of the dialogue. He did probably the majority of the dialogue with Superman as reshoot dialogue. It doesn't mean Whedon wrote the script for what Superman said. It just means he did the reshoots and for some pivotal dialogue in the movie. But having said that, it is clear that Zack Snyder did the bulk of Superman in that. It's not Whedon. And Whedon did a great opening sequence, especially. And he had a nice little thing he did at the end. That maybe those two scenes may be his credit. His script writing, his directing. That's probably completely Whedon. Maybe even his own script, as I said before. But when it comes to the rest of the Superman stuff, that's Terrio and Snyder all the way. Whedon probably reshot for reinterpretation purposes and to connect things and to cut things, cut up the film so it would be shorter. But that's about it. All right? So Alex Ledbeater is lying. Then he goes on to say, it was long presumed that Supes had been held back from marketing as a way to build up anticipation for his return from the dead. But it now appears to have been because all footage of him is still being worked on. The only released footage of Cavill in the trailers, the morning reunion with Lewis, is Zack Snyder's version confirmed by storyboards, which Whedon replaced in the film. Okay, the only moment where Cavill's real upper lip seems to appear is in the final, where he says to Cyborg he likes being alive before helping him part the mother boxes, and a few beats later when recovering from the destruction of the Unity. This would suggest that these are remaining elements from Snyder's shoot, although it could take further analysis to verify. Okay, so he agrees with me that that was Zack that shot that scene. Every Superman scene was changed, every single one. The camera phone opening, the resurrection, no, not the resurrection. The Justice League fight, do you believe that absolutely, when he said, do you believe, that was definitely Whedon. But you have to understand, Whedon is interchanging this. Like, Whedon has shots at certain points. Like, Whedon did certain shots. It's like with Aquaman talking to Batman. You can't say that Whedon did that whole sequence with Aquaman and Batman, because we know from the trailers, word for word, different angle, but word for word, in sync, and the people, you could see that it was Snyder that did it. But the close-up shots with Aquaman were definitely Whedon when Aquaman was in the water. Similarly, with the Do You Bleed stuff, I do agree Whedon was responsible for shooting that scene where Superman is taking Batman up into the sky and he says, do you bleed? But when Superman slapped Batman into the car, that was Zack Snyder. When Superman was fighting Wonder Woman, it was Zack Snyder. When Superman was fighting that whole fight sequence was Zack Snyder. Okay? Some parts of it could have been reshoots with Wonder Woman, especially when she's sliding around that slab thing, because it didn't look as refined. But it could also be just the color grading and just how they tweak the color for palettes. But at the end of the day, Zack did a huge portion of that. Okay? Even the suit looks different. A literally brighter version of the previous iteration. Doesn't matter. That doesn't matter, man. The color palette was different. It was tweaked. Okay. Now, this guy posted this on the day Justice League came out. I want to show you how much hate was going on. Of course, Alex Ledbeater is a hater of the DCU. So it's surprising when I see DCU fans actually going to Alex Ledbeater, like the guy on Facebook, and he was coming to me and look at this, stars. And I'm like, God damn, dude, you gonna pick a DCEU hater of all people? Okay, how Joss Whedon changed Wonder Woman. One prominent aspect of Justice League we know was the result of Whedon as the emerging romance between Bruce Wayne and Diana Prince. Wonder Woman's role in the film as the first recruit to Batman's cause is mostly as it appeared to be, but a good chunk of her role has shifted, with the DCU breakout star in many ways filling a more typical love interest position. There was always tension between her and Bruce, but in Just We Do, there's rarely been amped up. To wit, Bats and Diana have a brief subplot that simmers for most of the first half. Rises to prominence once they first encounter Steppenwolf, and then is resolved before traveling to Russia, a period we have already established has been greatly altered by reshoots. The scenes of active fission between the pair, their brief falling out and reconciliation, and additions that have given a heightened interplay in the team. I disagree with that. When Bruce Wayne first meets Diana and says, "Hi," that is absolutely Zack Snyder. We saw that from the trailers. Now, when Diana, they cut straight into Steppenwolf's invasion of the world. That's all Zack Snyder as well. So they probably reorganized that stuff. I'll agree with that. When Diana's walking on the shores talking to Bruce, I was wondering if that was Whedon or Zack. I wasn't sure if it was Whedon or Zack when Diana and Bruce are talking to each other. I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt that it's catchy. I don't know. The color tone, the color palette made it different. I've never seen anything like that. So it's very possible it could be Zack, it could be Whedon. I'm not sure. I'll be honest with you. That's one of those things. And then the conversation, the dialogue's kind of minimal. So it could, it's Terrier's dialogue. So it could have been Whedon that directed that. It could have been Zack. I'm going to guess it's not Whedon. And let me tell you why it's not Whedon. When Whedon was doing the reshoots, Gal Gadot was not available to do reshoots at the same time with everybody else. Unless Gal and Ben could get together to do those reshoots with Ray Fisher, Cyborg. Remember, he was there as well. I don't know how they would have done it. Maybe independently. Now, to the credit, at the end of shooting Justice League, Gal wasn't there either. All right? And we can see that in the B-roll footage where Gal was absolutely absent when we were looking at the final scenes where the Justice League was on the ground near to Steppenwolf's place. And we were seeing Aquaman, we saw the Flash, we saw Cyborg. We did not see Diana. Well, Bruce was up in the plane when they turned and everything. So she was shot separately to them. She was shot separately to them in the scene where Aquaman was joking, but he was serious when he was telling the truth about their possibilities of facing Steppenwolf, and then he goes off on a tangent. So it's very possible that those are either Whedon reshoots, which I doubt. They're Zack Snyder reshoots, I believe, because they were in the B-roll footage. But I do believe Gal wasn't there for that, and I don't think she was there for the reshoots either. So it is very possible. It's very possible because she was pregnant. So it's very possible that Gal shot those things later on, and which means it could have been a reshoot, it could not have been a reshoot. But I doubt that Gal with Bruce, when we saw her talking to Bruce and walking, that was a reshoot. So I think that was all Snyder. And how we know it's Snyder is because Snyder sets the tone for what Alfred wants by he's saying something really kind of dirty about Diana when Bruce says, "I want to know her skill set." And he's like, "Oh, of course you want to know her skill set." He's like, "Shall we?" Okay, we know that's from the original Zack Snyder shoots. So this guy creating this theory that Whedon did most of the banter between Diana and Bruce, I don't agree with that. Okay, in fact, even Diana speaking to Cyborg, I believe even then, we know when she was actually talking to Cyborg out there in Gotham, that was Zack Snyder. But there is also the scene where she's with Alfred and she's talking to Cyborg via the computer. I know that the earlier scene that you saw with Cyborg with most of his body parts and Victor and Silas Stone dealing with him, we know that's Whedon. Okay, even the discussion of Cyborg with Diana, it's possible that could be Whedon as well. All right, because of the level of detail. You look at the level of detail, and we know that some of Cyborg scenes was reshot. So it's very possible that little snippet right there, just her little dialogue with, not necessarily where Diana's talking to Cyborg, but where you have the close-up with Cyborg responding to her, that little snippet there, and even the scene where you see the image, that little snippet there was redone by Whedon, specifically the Cyborg part, not necessarily Diana talking to him, okay? Because Diana's wearing the same outfit. Not to say that they can't get the same wardrobe, but you see certain places where the wardrobe is different, right? Even with Silas Stone, there's a point where he's talking to this cleaner guy, and he's in totally different outfit when he's speaking with Cyborg. So, and he even has gray hair, so that tells you that, okay, Whedon probably shot this and they snipped it together. All right? So, with Diana and Bruce, I do believe that there was some reshoots done with Whedon, but I think it's more with the point where Bruce, he speaks to Diana about Steve Trevor. I think they introduced the Steve Trevor part in a reshoot. I really seriously do believe that. I don't think it's a whole entire scene. I even think that the scene where Bruce is talking to Diana's talking about to lead and stuff, and they kind of change it so that she has to lead them or whatever. I think that was changed a bit. That possibly is a reshoot part as well. But I don't think he really had much to do with Diana and Bruce other than that. This is me speculating. Along with this, we got a greater force of Wonder Woman's past, specifically the events of a solo film that appeared to turn around the DC's fortunes early there. Bruce calls Diana out on her turning her back on the world and brashly named Steve Trevor in the conversation. We get further nods to her origin in World War I, initially by trailers originating from Snyder with So basically he's kind of saying that's the part that he thinks was reshot. I honestly think that's the part that was reshot. I don't think the whole entire scene. The reason I say the whole entire scene wasn't reshot by Joss Whedon is because when we see Batman again, right after that situation, he's in the same outfit, but he just doesn't have his tie on. So it makes me think, okay, and I've seen this in the B-roll footage with Zack Snyder, so I know this was the scene that was meant to be shot. So what we were seeing in the trailers with Batman in a black outfit, which was the outfit he was wearing on the plane, I don't know what that could have been a throwaway scene. It could have been a scene afterwards. I don't know. But it's definitely not a scene that necessarily Whedon shot. It could have been a Snyder shot. Now, we know that in the trailers, Batman was looking at a hologram of Superman's outfit. So, I'm not too sure what that had to do with anything. It could have been, I don't know what that had to do with anything, but something changed between that trailer and, which was the second trailer, I believe, and what we got on the screen. Okay? That's why I'm kind of curious to see what Zack Snyder, what he would have done, what he would have left in, what would have stayed. Now, we know that Alright, Superman's what we love is like Whedon's biggest standalone additions, but there are several other scenes that appear to be completely fresh from reshoots. Many of these are heavy-handed joke beats. The meta grave digging sequence where Flash and Cyborg on the weirdness of the story like his justification for something morbid. No, I think the graveyard scene is definitely, I think, Zack Snyder. And the reason I'll say it's Zack Snyder, I think I'm right about this. The reason I say it's Zack Snyder is because I don't know how people think about it, but the graveyard scene, and the pet cemetery joke is it's really feeding off of the pet cemetery. So the whole thing's built off of pet cemetery. Basically, it's a pet cemetery sort of spoof, and I don't think Whedon did that. That set. I could be wrong. I don't have any really facts to back it up. So I'll have to check that out for myself, and I'll be able to tell you why I think that scene is not it's not altered in any way. What I've heard from Gal and Aquaman is that they cut the scene with Aquaman and Gal being there at the grave site. So it seems as though Aquaman and Wonder Woman and everybody was there, and it was just the Flash and Cyborg digging him up. So I didn't hear anything about that scene being changed otherwise. So I don't think that scene was changed. The Lewis and Martha scene, complete with thirsty sex joke, has a ring of TV to it. Again, I can't confirm or deny that is Zack or Whedon. The TV commercial sounds kind of like Whedon because of just the way how the announcer talks, but I really can't confirm or deny if that whole scene is Whedon or not. Now there is someone got a footage of Lois Lane and talking to Martha Kent, and it seemed to have a different scenery to it, so it's very possible it could be Whedon. And I actually incorporated that in the runtime. It's dubious, I don't know. And the Flash graffitiing of a fellow prison visitor is obviously a new scene, and it features Mark McClure. And that is definitely correct, and that is a Whedon scene. There are many more jokey quotas to scenes that stand out further. King of Thieves is Batman saying something's definitely bleeding after Superman's confrontation. Perhaps an attempt to pay off the "do you bleed" moment. I don't know. See, again, Alex Ledbeater is... I think he may be wrong about that. That could be a Zack moment. Actually be a Zack moment. So, we'll see. I can't confirm that. I can't deny it. In the Flash recruitment scene, which, thanks to the 216 SDC trailer, we know was mostly Snyder, at the end camera angles suddenly change and Barry starts rambling about brunch, which, as this moment is called back to just mid-credit scene, is clearly an addition. We can identify further Whedon inserts of how they repeat his previous words. The Flash falling on Wonder Woman's chest, yes, that's definitely Whedon. While Superman saying he feels itchy post-resurrection comes from Buffy. It's not as direct, but the bats and soups bro out after Bruce buys back the farm is a mirror to Age of Ultron. No, my friend. When Bat says I bought the bank, I'm telling you, partner, that's Zack Snyder, and we know that's Zack Snyder. So you see, that's the thing. He's saying that Whedon did the part with bats and soups, and I can recall that clearly is where Clark and Bruce were talking. That clearly is a Zack Snyder shot scene, and we know that. But just there's no CGI to Clark's face, so that's clearly Zack. And the thing about it is, what people don't know is Zack imitated Whedon as well. And that's where you guys are going to fall and stumble, because Zack also definitely imitated Whedon on a number of things and put in a number of jokes. So him citing bats and soups bro out after Bruce buys the bank, that's Zack Snyder. It's worth noting some jokes were originally placed by Zack and have been adjusted slightly, obviously other Flash moments. But the Aquaman sits on the lasso beat was originally reported from principal photography, although the strange beat of fancying Diana, done with voiceover and insert shot, may be a reshoot addition. Ah, he got it. So Aquaman sitting on the lasso beat was originally reported in principal photography. See? So I was right. It was actually Zack Snyder that shot that scene initially. And so it means, therefore, that it may not have been Joss Whedon that shot that scene. Remember, guys, I was telling you, it may not be Joss Whedon that shot that scene? Well, there you go. There's my confirmation from Alex Ledbeater. The principal photography actually had it, and they actually went in and saw that joke. Okay. Every change Whedon made to Zack Snyder's film. A lot of Zack's original footage has been completely cut. With the big addition stated, it's time to move on to the other side of the story, which was cut in word lots. Justice League's marketing blitz had been intense, which had given us an awful lot of footage from the film. Pretty much every major moment not featuring Superman, and even more didn't make it through. Trailer shots not being in the movie are not necessarily always signs of changes. Often they can be never intended to turn up in the film, but liked by the marketing department enough that ceases to matter. But in this case, we can glean a lot. The first two trailers from July 2016 and March 2017 were made before any reshoots, and so can be read as pure Snyder. Whereas what came after, most notably the SDC extended sneak peek and Heroes trailer from October 17, are done post reshoots. We're going to use the earlier ones more for evidence. Actually, no. You are actually wrong. The reshoots weren't wrapped until a certain time, but what I would say is this. The sneak peek definitely was Zack and Junkie XL stuff. The music, the scenes, the Heroes trailer, on the other hand, that was Whedon. And that was mostly Whedon, even though there was some Zack stuff in there. Meaning, that was Hero. I believe Whedon had his say in how it was put together. So a lot's gone. Bruce's extended journey to Amnesty Bay. Alright? Bruce's extended journey to Amnesty Bay. So, we didn't need to have all that. All of Cyborg, these are all minor things though. All of Cyborg's pre-transformation. Pre-transformation, meaning his life before he was Cyborg. Okay? They had some little shots of him being a footballer and stuff, but they didn't bother to bring that in. No biggie. Barry breaking the window with his finger. And Bruce watching Superman's hologram. And most of Bruce and Diana's recruitment discussion. No, not most of Bruce and Diana's recruitment discussion. I know what they're really trying to say. But it's about the age of heroes and stuff. They use that in the trailers. Again, here's the other important thing. We saw a mother box vibrating inside of Silas and Victor Stone's house. That was not in the movie. It was never meant to be in the movie. Alright? So sometimes you have stuff in the trailers that are not meant for the movie. The League rallying before fighting Steppenwolf in Gotham. I don't know what that is about. I don't know what he's talking about. Cyborg not believing in Batman and Wonder Woman preparing the team. Cyborg said, I don't think you were real. I'm real when it's just full. That's what they're talking about. And that was in the very first thing, and that probably never even was intended to end up in the movie. That was just a look, right? It was a teaser. Wonder Woman preparing the team. She was saying, don't get ready to move or whatever. They changed that up, okay? Cyborg saving the policemen at Heroes Park. Well, quite frankly, that was never going to happen. That was an extended scene that did not show up in the movie. No biggie. Aquaman fighting upwards towards Steppenwolf in the final battle. Besides that, Aquaman fighting parademons. Cyborg flying into the sky. Actually, he wasn't flying into the sky. He was actually falling down below. The part where he was flying up into the sky was when he was learning how to fly. And that was cut from the movie. The gang stood heroically against an orange sky. That was never meant to be in the movie. Additionally, that was at the end of the movie. Additionally, although they were never in trailers, Willem Dafoe's Volko and Kiersey Clemens' Iris West were nowhere to be seen. No biggie. They were cut from the movie. They weren't going to have these pivotal roles in the movie, so it didn't matter. Notice that these are all moments with actors, meaning we're not just dealing with altered effect shots, but actual days of principal production undone. And, these are minor things to the movie. There's nothing key there. And then there's a biggie. The SDG trailer money shot of Alfred meeting who we presume to be Superman. Not only is that not here nor any of the surrounding scene, but it's nigh on impossible to place it. No, it's not. He came back. He showed up. Okay. This is after he wakes up from the dead. He speaks to Lois Lane, and then he goes. It may be Supes turning up in Gotham after his jaunt to Kansas just in time to help the team. Alfred's attitude fits, but that also feels strange, which means it could not have been Superman at all. Late additions to the shut up. Why Justice League's aspect ratio is different to Batman v Superman. Okay. And then how Joss Whedon changed Zack Snyder's mythology and tone. So this is a hater trying to make sense of things, and you know haters are stupid. How does Joss Whedon change Zack Snyder's mythology and tone? With these active changes and cuts made clear, let's conclude by looking at the broader impact of the reshoots. A lot of moments feel like a mesh of directors. No, most emblematically shown by visuals. The film has been uniformly made light, which makes contrast obvious. And further, the effects vary widely, perhaps seen best in Aquaman and Bruce meeting. With the green screen painfully so evident, it's amazing they had the clip available pre-release. That said, you shot everything together, you end up with a vastly different product. I'm not too sure what he means by that, because again, when Aquaman meets Bruce, almost the entire frickin' scene is Zack's, and it's shot on scene. They put special effects in there to put the ice in, but everything's on site. So when he starts talking about painfully obvious, yes, you can see that Aquaman was behind a green screen for when it was a close-up shot. But other than that, didn't see anything else. Oh, there's 2 scenes in that whole entire movie where he says, "You're out of your mind, Bruce Wayne." No, it's not that. Then he kind of snorts and he dives into the water, and then he says, "It doesn't bother me." I think when he said "doesn't bother me" and blinked, that was Whedon. Perhaps the biggest difference from what you'd imagine Snyder pitched is the handling of mythology. Justice League is bringing together heroes with range of powers, financial, folk scientific, New God, Amazon, Atlantean, and Krypton, in a millennia-spanning story that covers Galaxies. And while we know the film was always going to be focused more tightly on the heroes, the handling of the epic tale appears to have changed. It is a light story with quick exposition dumps, making very basic MacGuffins clear. It was going to be a short story. It was going to be a light story. So I'm not too sure what you're talking about again. You're being an asshole. Throughout the opening third, we have the recurring appearance of a triangle of cubes in various cultures. Rather obvious shorthand for the discovery of mother boxes that seem to have been about accelerating arcs. Batman enters knowing something's up. The opening soundstage intro to the character using a previously unlinked Holt McCallany, and breaks continuity by Bruce not having a beard, leading us to conclude that that's an addition. Of course, Bruce does not have a beard, and he should have had a beard because he's going up to face Aquaman next and he has a beard. That's correct, and that's why I thought it was a plot hole. Then later sees the painting during Aquaman meeting. It burns to us their conflict as a scene that has some very obvious CGI additions at its end. We'd say this is also a reshoot. The scene where there was a CGI addition, I don't know about CGI addition, but I know there was green screen behind Aquaman in the close-up. Alright? Later, Arthur finds bright green parademon blood to get him to Atlantis, a sequence we know was greatly truncated. There is no costume acquisition. So what? And was originally going to be facilitated by Vulko. So what? That's like, it doesn't change anything, and it doesn't make the scene less dramatic. It seems the grand scope of the story was cut down and replaced with Prometheus-style pictograms. Of course, here are blurred lines with some elements that could be bridged. Parademons being powered by fear, especially when turning on Steppenwolf, is a bit more Snydery. They were not going to turn on Steppenwolf, but this is a safe assumption. The thing about that scene that was abridged, and we know it was abridged, we saw a parademon. We saw a parademon. All you got to do, all right, guys, when Steppenwolf booms tombs in, Mira uses her powers to control water and slams him down below. In the scene where she expands that water and slams him down below, when you look to the right of the screen, you'll see a parademon floating there. Which means there were parademons that accompanied Steppenwolf, and there was a bigger fight than just Steppenwolf taking on these guys. A parademon was there as well. What does this mean? Well, Steppenwolf boom tube through that guy's ship with parademons. And what we're seeing is, I believe, they shifted time. What I mean to say is this. Aquaman saved the guy after Steppenwolf had boom tube in. And had with the parademon and reached Atlantis. After he had saved the guy, and he'd gone back to land with him, and then he realized, oh snap, I see parademon blood on this, and the blood was very, very green. Like, you could tell they color tweaked it for that. And you can see parademon blood was really, really bright green. I was like, what the hell? But hey, they started from the beginning of the movie. That's, again, Whedon tweaking the design a bit. But when we look at, I believe the parademon blood was going to look mossy green. I also think the sky was going to be blood red. So I think they tweaked the color palette to make it less horrific, which I thought was stupid, but that's what it is. He looks at the parademon blood. He realizes he needs to go back. He heads back. And as he's heading back, there's this massive war between Atlanteans, parademons, and Steppenwolf. That's what really I think was going down. Mera was using her powers. And I believe they cut up those scenes to make Aquaman get back to the site on time. And he fights Steppenwolf after Mera doesn't succeed. But I believe a lot of action sequences were actually chopped down. It's the action sequences, I believe, that have been cut down to make the film have the length, and they really focused on the story. And again, the guys who were editing this film were guys that edited Zack Snyder's films, or generally edited the DCEU films. And again, I've done a video on this, so let me get to that video there. I actually did a video on this talking about Zack Snyder's visuals. So the editing of the film, and the editing, they said the film was poorly edited. No, Zack Snyder's film was not poorly edited. Oof. It was done by these very professional editors. Let me get to them. Okay. So there they are. David Brenner, who always edits Zack Snyder's films, and then added Richard Pearson and Martin Walsh. Martin Walsh, he edited the Wonder Woman movie, and Richard Pearson, he had edited some other movies like Kong, Skull Island, and so on. So again, these were really famed editors. In fact, most of them had won an Oscar for editing. So it was the editors who tried to snip it together and make it nice, smooth, and flawless so that the story would flow. Obviously, they cut to the chase and they said, okay, Steppenwolf gets the mother box and let's just move on with the story. The story was a little bit more elaborate in terms of fighting. So that's what really Leadbeater's talking about. Similar shifts occurred throughout. The League visited the Batcave, then moves to a hangar that, per set visit reports, was meant to be totally different location offsite. So the League visit the Batcave, right? And that's where they had their discussion. And they're saying that they were supposed to move to a hangar. In the trailers, you see Batman in a black outfit, Aquaman in the Aquaman clothing that he was wearing when he captured the guy, the sailor dude. Wonder Woman's dressed in a black, sort of blackish dress, and I don't know what the Flash was dressed in. When we see them in the underground area with the table, the Batcave, people are saying it would have been another site, but I disagree. I believe they would have assembled exactly there in the Batcave. I just think there's an alternate version of that. And both versions, I think, were shot by Zack, but they chose to use the earlier version in this case. Some things that appear in the trailers never were intended to appear in the movie. I told you the mother box vibrating inside of Silent Stone's room was never meant to be in the movie like that. We have a couple other scenes where we see Cyborg and Wonder Woman posing up with the shield and stuff. That was never meant to be in the movie. Though, of course, those were much earlier scenes in earlier shooting. So, you know, it's not like... And there were certain scenes by The Flash, which they were seen in their trailers, but they were never meant to be in the movie. These were just introduced the characters. So, it's not like just because you see something in the trailer means it would show up in the movie. Even though it's kind of cool to go through certain things in the trailer and you wonder, man, why didn't they just bring this scene into the movie? You know what I mean? Because you've been introduced to it in the trailers. But the trailers are there to tell a story, pretty much, of the characters. So you don't necessarily... the trailers are not necessarily there, and this is something people have to get used to give away the movie for you. And I'm glad that what happened in the movie wasn't exactly what happened in the trailers, even though I would have loved that shot of Batman on top of the gargoyle instead of that brief shot of Batman that we saw by Commissioner Gordon. A lot of the gorgeous shots we saw in the movie, we didn't get them in the trailers. We didn't get them in the movie, so it was kind of interesting as well. I think that's what led to some people's disappointment. Then we somehow catch the flying fox. It's not the flying fox outside of Bruce's hangout, despite it having no reason to be there. First of all, the flying fox is underground with Bruce. We saw it the first time. We saw it in when Wonder Woman was walking in, and then when they were actually having their discussion, they were underneath the flying fox, what he calls the flying fox, which is actually a troop carrier. So every time they entered there, and the concept art shows it too, the flying fox was there. Okay. Now he's talking about the flying fox, then somehow catch the flying fox outside of Bruce's hangout, despite it having no reason to be there. I'm not quite sure what he's talking about. Now it's not making any sense. I don't know what scene he's talking about, because I didn't see that in the movie. How much this was cutting around, we don't know, but considering these scenes are known as reshoots, they're not necessarily reshoots. You also get the non-Superman adjustments to the ending fight and its scale. Obviously, it's changed from a nighttime sequence to day, with ominous red skies presumably made to visually lighten the scene, with the coloring accounting for the original filter of footage. Good point. It really was more in the evening, more in the afternoon time. And I do believe that there was some post-production changes to the movie, obviously. So, yes, I've noticed that. It was more an afternoon thing instead of a nighttime thing. I thought that was interesting. I still don't like the sky being so almost orange red instead of deep blood red, with the coloring accounting for the original filter of the footage. That's possible. However, the location appears to have changed from Pripyat, the location of Chernobyl disaster, to the totally fictitious Bezhornov. Not Pisarnov, but Bezhornov, I think it is called. It had been rumored there would be a real-world connection, and Batman stating there was a disaster 30 years ago is pretty much an overt nod. Chernobyl in 1986. Actually, they shot in... it wasn't Chernobyl, and it was never going to be Chernobyl. It was shot in Latvia. And the name of the place was Bezhornov. Alright? That's just what it was. And so... there's a lot in the movie that we were expecting, like, you know, something darker. It was, you know, it was supposed to be a little bit more darker, I think. And they changed it up a bit. Structurally, though, everything feels lessened, made less complex and briefer, and coming after things already lightened. That doesn't just alter flow, but the entire feel. I don't think it was less complex. I think it was... the complexity was about the same. I think the action was cut down. I keep on saying that over and over again. They did obviously tweak the color palette, but it wasn't something that was tweaked so violently that you didn't get it. You know what I mean? But I did notice that the fight with Steppenwolf was actually in the day. It wasn't in the night, which is interesting. It was probably going to be in the night, and it was going to... well, it wasn't going to necessarily be in the night, but it was going to be darker, and it was going to be more blood red, and the colors were going to be a little bit more horrific looking. It was going to be a little bit more horror on the horror side of things. So I absolutely agree with him on that part, but that's interesting. And finally, there was obviously the music, which had a dramatic impact on the tone. That I will agree with you on that, especially when Danny Elfman calls upon the classic Superman and Batman themes. We likely never know what Junkie XL's verdict will sound like. Or actually, we do. Just go to the sneak peek and you will find out. It will have been epic. And his replacement was clearly brought in to gel together with the reshot moments, but that doesn't make it stand out any less. Alone, the reshots have a purpose. On the grand scale, they simply create a mess. I disagree. So Junkie XL's musical score was okay. It was good. It was unique. It was different. But I would agree with almost everybody that it wasn't the finale we wanted for the trilogy. We wanted the repeated themes that were throughout the trilogy to make the impact in the final part of the trilogy. I already agreed with everybody about that. What I'm saying is don't down what Danny Elfman did. You shouldn't do that because his music was okay. It was appropriate for the situation. It was appropriate for the movie. And it gave us a Justice League feel. It gave us this movement into this new place. Okay, we're going into a Justice League movie. You remember Justice League from 2001? There you go. You know, it gave us that nostalgia. So I agree with that. In certain parts of the movie, it rated me at first, and then I stopped being so angry about it, and I realized, it fits in. It's okay. From all these examples, it's unavoidably clear that Zack Snyder's vision was changed. No, his vision was not changed. His vision was to move... Zack Snyder's vision was to move us through the hero's journey to the heroes we know today. His vision wasn't changed. What I would say is his project, obviously by a new director with a new composer, was changed. His project was changed. Not significantly that it wasn't a Zack Snyder film, but it was changed. Obviously, it got a different flavor because of that. Not that big a difference of flavor, but it is still a difference of flavor. And that's why people wanting a director's cut doesn't sound bad to me at all. My problem is they bash this movie unreasonably, like this dummy is doing. And he's majoring in minors, basically. He majored in minors. Like, for instance, this color palette you're seeing here, it was always meant to be this way. Zack Snyder intended this to go this way because Zack Snyder's people had it going this way. What I would have loved to see was the final fight sequence looking something like this. It didn't look like this. There was this sheen, and the stuff looked very CG at the end. Very CG. Like characters standing in front of a green screen almost. They didn't integrate with the environment. Telling me that they hadn't mastered what they were trying to do. If this is Steppenwolf, if this is what he looks like in an invasion, if this is the stuff you're seeing, why are we seeing purple stuff? Why did we see purple stuff? This should have been consistent. It should have been consistent with this. I know that there was this big dome thing that was happening, and we saw it in two trailers before. But still, I mean, come on, man. It's not the purple thing. It's the thing that we should have been seeing was a lot of this lava coming out the ground cracking up and stuff. We didn't get that. And I know that even before all this, it was designed that way. Steppenwolf was supposed to have this green thing and the purple stuff coming out and stuff. But we needed to see that lava. We needed to see that hell happening. And we didn't see that. And so I think they dialed down on that and they picked up on this stuff. And I don't know whose creative idea it was to do that. But we need to lighten up the film. Okay, fine. And so we had this purple stuff instead. You know, and you could tell that purple stuff came after. And I didn't like that idea. All right. It still fit in. It still looked creepy on the theatrical screen, but it was not finished. So there was this unfinished feel for that final battle with Steppenwolf, which I excused because I liked the story and I was caught up in the story, but it was unfinished. It felt like that's why people say it felt like a Marvel movie. It felt the CGI was not up to par. It was like Marvel CGI. It wasn't, the physics wasn't there. Look at the physics in this. Epic. And that's what the last impression people have is what determines the film. The film was epic all the way through until that final fight scene. It wasn't epic. It was great. It was fantastic, but it wasn't epic. You felt like you was watching something that was not real. It was virtual. And it reminds me of those Thor movies and all the Marvel movies I've ever seen. It didn't feel grounded. And that's what people are commenting on, if I would have to be honest with you guys, as I analyze it further. All right. Now, all of this felt grounded all of this felt grounded. When Aquaman landed on the car, it wasn't as epic when he said "yeah" and all that. It wasn't as epic, but it was just interesting that there were certain scenes where it felt like the Justice League movie. Even when Cyborg was like, "You're welcome," and Flash says, "Woo-sa!" It felt a little bit awkward. It felt a little bit weird, and you know that in a way it was supposed to be bigger than that. The trailers kind of primed it up and everything, and it's because of the physics of the movement. I mean, when you see Batman driving along, you feel the physics of the thing, the movement, the wind. Zack Snyder's known for the physics of the thing. Like Owls of Gahul, you feel the owls, you feel the air fluttering through them, and they're flying, and you can feel the speed, and that's Zack. So we didn't get that for the final fight sequence. We got some stuff stirring up on the ground, and Steppenwolf landing with his axe and really working it. But when you saw Steppenwolf earlier on in the underground passage scene, you felt that epic sort of physics. You didn't get that physics in the final fight with Steppenwolf, and I think it's just because they didn't have everything polished up and finished up properly enough, because of that color tone that they were trying to go for, that they didn't really quite get. So that's my personal opinion on that. I keep on telling people it's not it's part of my pet peeve, but it's not really a big deal that takes me out of the movie. It's not a bad movie at all I just think it wasn't fully finished. But it's not a bad movie at all, in any way, shape, or form. It's a good movie. It's a solid movie. Like I said, I don't think it's a masterpiece. All right? So in short, this is what this guy, Alex Leadbeater, said. And I just don't... Here it is. Alone, the reshoots would have been perfect. On the grand scale, they simply created a mess. That's not true at all. And you can tell this guy's a hater. And this is what people fed off of. People fed off of this. They got triggered, and they actually used a hater. A hater got them riled up, and he posted this on the day of the release of the film to tear down the film. And you guys actually bought into that and went with it. And to this day, everybody, even the quoting Alex Leadbeater, quoting a clown, man. You're quoting a clown. When you look at the scenes that they say, oh, cut out the movie, cut out the movie. And the movie's good, and they're not pivotal scenes to the story. I can understand that there are pivotal scenes to the story. They're not. And then some people say, well, it's not the legendary, epic Zack Snyder film. And it's epic, though. Those epic fight scenes, you could see that this was epic, man. Don't even try to pretend it wasn't epic. This was an epic scene here. That underground scene was epic. I mean, shit. Almost everything was epic. Superman fighting the League, even though it was, again, not polished. It wasn't polished. When you look at it, it's not as polished as a Zack Snyder film will generally be. That physics, the air, the movement, it wasn't there. And we know Zack shot those scenes, but it wasn't polished, so it still looks CG-ish. When you look at the scenes, the earlier scenes where we have the Amazons facing Steppenwolf, polished. They feel real. They feel visceral. And that's Zack Snyder's thing. When Batman was flying his plane and stuff through into Steppenwolf's thing, visceral, So, certain scenes weren't as visceral as they should have been. And again, it just has to do with post-production. It doesn't have to do with the actual actors fighting. It's post-production. You have to refine it. Post-production, that final fight scene with Steppenwolf wasn't as epic as it should have been, mainly because of post-production work that still needed to be done on it. And you could tell where Zack really did work certain things, where Superman was dealing with Steppenwolf and stuff, but it still wasn't fully finished. And you have to get your work fully finished to make the movie really look good. So it wasn't finished, and you could tell when Aquaman knocked Steppenwolf away with his trident or the quadrant. It didn't look real. It looked very fake. And the reason it looked fake was because it wasn't finished. See? So, hopefully, I hope they are working on the digital release to make sure they got those niches and pieces finished. They should do that. Otherwise, they've robbed Warner Brothers of the money they put out to them, the special effects team. They need to finish this stuff off. Warner Bros. Should push them to make sure they get that finished. So when I get the digital copy, it really looks good. The copy I have so far needs A lot of work still. So we'll see. But like I was saying, that's what Alex Ledbetter had in his pocket. And those are not extensive reshoots. And those don't show that Whedon cut out a lot of things, because Whedon's not even responsible for cutting out things. It's the editors that are responsible for that. So that, again, most of what these guys say, these haters, don't really carry much weight. I agree with him on certain scenes, such as this scene with, the final scenes, how they looked. I agree with him on certain things, such as the soundtrack has a big effect on the movie. And for people who are not really into content and substance, they could get carried away with that. Not that it's a bad soundtrack, because it does fit in with, say, Justice League Unlimited and Justice League 2001. And that's what Zack Snyder was shooting for anyway, so it didn't really matter. So it works. It's not like it changed the tone of the film to something that Zack Snyder wasn't trying to get to. So it works. My thing is, if people had supported this film, was better than Thor Ragnarok. Some people think it was better than Star Wars The Last Jedi. I think Star Wars The Last Jedi was better. I would say that in terms of because of just Star Wars The Last Jedi it had finish. Okay, it had proper finish. That's the only reason. Otherwise, Justice League would have beaten it. I mean, Justice League had better content than Star Wars The Last Jedi. I think its story was stronger. Even though Star Wars The Last Jedi took the themes that Justice League had and elaborated on them more, I think that the daringness of Justice League in terms of opinionated film, romantic realism, I think it carries it further in terms of quality. But again, The Last Jedi beats it out because even though it's traditional storytelling, it has something extra to say, and it also is much more refined in how it said it. You can tell that Justice League's I gotta agree with other people, it's an incomplete movie in that respect of its CGI. Its special effects let it down. Its special effects is fantastic at certain points, and it lets it down in other points. And that's the problem with Justice League. But in terms of storytelling, it's superior to almost every comic book movie out there. In fact, even Star Wars The Last Jedi is not as superior as Justice League is in terms of its story. And Justice League has a simple story, but it's just that much more superior to Star Wars The Last Jedi. It's crazy. It's crazy. I can't believe I'm saying that. I'm just flicking around things and evaluating in my mind as I speak. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It's a very elaborate, long video again. And if you take your time to watch this and you take your time to comment, I will respond to you. Just make sure when you make your comments, I'm all for people with reason and logic, that we can deal with reason. We can reason with one another, okay? If you're going to come here and make a dumb comment on my channel, a stupid comment on my channel, then I will block you, okay? You guys have a great one.